listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
Welcome to another edition of the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. I'm your host, Femi Abebefe. As always, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Our producer, Elliot Bowman, with us on the ones and twos. And Michael, Happy New Year, the first day of 2024. Hope you brought the new year in right and we're able to celebrate football here as we look back on what happened in Week 17.
Yeah, it was a good day, you know. I mean, it was an up and down day, but it was a good day. I was happy. I came out of the Russo picks 2-1, and he was 2-1, so I got through that. It was a little scary. Should have been 3-0, but Elliot's Colts, for some reason, decided to play Palms 80% of the time. I mean, I want to just go berserk, but that's somewhere else. I was cursing in front of Dominic, which isn't always good.
Oh, that's not good.
Anyway, I promise to be better next week. But it's great. 2024, looking forward to it. It'll be a great year. You know, we're blessed. We're certainly all blessed.
Yeah, Happy New Year to all of our listeners and viewers as well. We would hope everyone has a happy and healthy New Year. We have a lot of fun college football today and all that stuff, with the NFL taking a step back here on a Monday. But, of course, Week 18, we'll get into all the ramifications of that going forward this podcast and, of course, on Thursday. But let's start with the AFC number 1 seed, because the Baltimore Ravens yesterday, my goodness, I mean, they just blitzed another team that people think highly of as they beat the Miami Dolphins 56-19. This was the 1 seed, was up for grabs for both of these squads here, but Baltimore secures it. Lamar secures MVP with the 5 touchdown passes and only 3 incompletions in the game as, hey, the road to the Super Bowl in the AFC now goes through Maryland.
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately for Miami, they're beat up. I mean, you know, this is not the same Miami team that we thought was turning the corner defensively. You know, when they lose Howard in the game, and then Eli Apple comes in, they went right after him. And then, of course, Tua has the bad shoulder, and, you know, all of a sudden the problems just compound themselves. And then Bradley Chubb, unfortunately, gets the ACL at the end of the game. So, look, Baltimore clearly is. You know, anybody that thought that Baltimore was going to not be able to come back and bounce back were sorely mistaken. It's funny, Baltimore scored 21 points in the fourth in this game, I think kind of to make a statement. Mm-hmm. And where is Miami? I mean, Baltimore's going to be a hard team to beat. I mean, the way that Lamar's playing, throwing the football, this isn't Lamar running. This is Lamar playing quarterback, really at a high level. And, you know, where are they going? Who's going to play them? And the way they run the ball, the physicality. I think the one thing I noticed watching the games yesterday, Femi, is you can tell the Ravens are still practicing. And their pad level's good, their physicality's still good, whereas some other teams, we'll talk about in a second, aren't. And that really shows up. It really shows up this time of the year.
Yeah, the Ravens, they suffered a number of injuries, but now with the number 1 seed secured, they can rest some guys and also practice hard during the bye week as they get ready for the divisional round. Like you said it, like the physicality jumps off the screen. I mean, Roquan Smith, he was all over the field yesterday, had a nice interception. How about the catches, though, by some of these Ravens pass catchers? Like Isaiah Likely with the one-handed catch goes down the sideline. One of the biggest plays of the day. Zay Flowers, he's been awesome as a first-round pick. Like they've really built an offense around Lamar Jackson that at the beginning of the season and in the offseason, we said, hey, can this Todd Monken offense be a 21st century offense? Because things had gotten stale with the previous play caller, and they've really lived up to all expectations and even surpassed them, what we've seen, especially in these big games.
Yeah, I mean, and look, Lamar's throwing the ball. He throws the ball well. We know he throws the ball well in the middle of the field. He was accurate. The Likely pass, I thought, was incredible. It was a great catch. It was incredible. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he's making plays down the field. Look, this is a hard team to play, and I think defensively they're so mentally tough. You know, the Dolphins were getting some things early in the game. They kind of got them corrected, and then they got to Tua, put some pressure on him, you know, and then he throws the 2 picks. You know, he gets sacked 3 times in the game. And once again, you know, I mean, for Miami, you know, look, Miami's got a good team, but the problem is, can you keep the team healthy, right?
Yeah.
And what have I often said about Miami? How do you beat Miami? And it was really clearly yesterday. They had 15 third downs in the game. They had 15 third downs in the game, and they went for it on 4th down 4 times. Now, they got behind. I get that. But when you when you put them into third downs and you limit the amount of explosive plays and you kind of clamp them down, you're going to put them in a third down situation, and they're not going to be as good. Whereas the Ravens played Canadian football the whole day. They were in 7 third downs all game. That's the recipe to win, Femi.
Yeah, stay out of third down, get first downs on first down and on second down, and the Ravens were able to do that. 491 yards of offense, 8.9 yards per play for Baltimore in this game. And we take a look on the Miami side, where last week it's like, okay, you beat Dallas. If you win the final 2 games, you're the number 1 seed. If you split those games, you win the AFC East. Now, after what happened with Buffalo and New England, next Sunday night in Miami, will be for the AFC East title. As Buffalo, they looked very shaky yesterday watching that game against New England.
You're being kind. You're being kind. I mean,
they won 27-21, but woof, it was bad.
They got gifted. The interception return for the touchdown by Douglas is a miscommunication. Zappe thinks they're throwing the slant. They don't. He throws and the receiver runs the off route. And then, the fumble, then they get another interception, and then you get a fumble. And I think basically at the end of the day, I think the Bills might have scored 7 points with their offense. They couldn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
They could not do anything. He's 15 for 30 in the games, Josh Allen, for 69 yards, right? And of course he threw one interception again. They ran the ball 37 times for 127 yards. Couldn't run the ball either. Couldn't run the ball. This was a game. It was funny. I'm watching this game and I'm saying to myself, for all the people that think New England's the worst team in the league and Belichick can't coach, all that crap, really, if they would be better, if they had a better quarterback, a better offensive line coach. I know their line coach has got some illness. He hasn't been there, Adrian Clem. And if they would have had some of these details nailed down, they would be right in the thick of this thing, right in the thick of it. They're not that bad. They really aren't. And it makes you worry about the Bills. Because the Bills couldn't block them yesterday, Femi. I don't know if you saw much of the game, but the Bills were having a hard time blocking them up front.
Yeah, it felt like every time I was looking up at that game, Josh Allen was trying to make some play outside of structure, which he tends to do a lot, but it was not good. It was clunky from the Bills, 4.1 yards per play. They were outgained by New England. New England had 5.5 yards per play, but those turnovers, and we talked about this game yesterday morning in previewing it for the Lombardi line on VSiN, and you said that New England, they could be able to be competitive, but they need Zappe to protect the football. They were competitive with him not protecting the football. 4 turnovers. Exactly. The guy threw 3 interceptions in the game, and they still were right there with a chance to go ahead and pull off the big upset, and would have been a devastating upset for Buffalo based on what else happened in the AFC.
That was, how I classify the wins. You've got the dominating win, a deflecting win, a win kind of where you're, dictating win where you're not kind of into control, but you win the game. And then you've got a dangerous win. This was a dangerous win for them. Think about it. New England goes, they get returned, they get the ball back again, 1 play interception, then they go 3 plays punt, 1 play interception, 2 play fumble, 3 play punt. That's their first quarter. And then they start the second quarter off with interception, then they throw a touchdown, then of course they miss another field goal, which is a turnover again, and then the end of the first half. And then the second half, they had punt, touchdown, punt. The Buffalo was able to control the clock and keep the ball. Buffalo had the ball for 32 minutes. They scored their only touchdown in the third quarter. So, they were fortunate. I was unimpressed with Buffalo. I thought Buffalo's offensive line got beat up in the game, and New England played their asses off. It's a 6-point loss for them, but they had more than enough chance. They just gave the game away to Buffalo.
Yeah, that's what happens sometimes. You turn the ball over, it's hard to win these football games, especially when you do it 4 times. So we have the AFC side wrapped up, and we'll obviously go more in depth on this Dolphins-Bills game, Sunday Night Football next week, the final game, game 272 coming up on Thursday. But the NFC side, the San Francisco 49ers, I don't think the expectation was that they would clinch the 1 seed yesterday, but they ended up doing it. They beat the Commanders 27-10. Purdy was once again efficient, made some great plays outside of structure. Ayuk had a big day there. Niners defense was able to clamp down in the second half after giving up some yards in the first half. But San Francisco once again took care of business on the road in their final road game of the season.
Yeah, look, give credit. The Commanders, they just can't. It's a little bit like when they played Dallas, right? It was a close game at the half, and then eventually they get taken out of the game. They can't quite do enough. And San Francisco gave them some yards in the first half, but in the second half, other than, they had that one drive in the fourth quarter that resulted in an interception, they were able to finally put some pressure on Hal and take this game over. Good win for them. But they needed they post this win, and then they get the luckiest break of all. I mean, this Eagle defense. We're going to need therapy, people back here in Philadelphia. Philly is a perfect example of a team that doesn't look like they're practicing. And I know they're practicing, but their pad level, their run fits, their run defense is really bad. I mean, I always thought James Conner was a good player, but watching him yesterday, he was really good. And Michael Carter, they couldn't tackle Michael Carter. They could not tackle him. I mean, you know what was funny, Femi? I don't know if you noticed this, but when the Eagles kicked the field goal to go up by, what was it,
31-28?
31-28, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody they panned the crowd around, and there wasn't a happy face in the crowd, right?
Nope.
There wasn't, because the crowd knew that the Eagles defense couldn't stop them. The crowd knew it. And, and they went right down the field. I mean, they went right down the field and scored. It was a game that I don't know how they did it. I thought for sure, when it's 21-3 at the end of the first half or 21-6 at halftime, you think the Eagles are going to take control of the game. It's 21-6 at halftime. I knew the Cardinals got the ball to start the second half, but you got to clamp them down. But you give up 220 yards rushing to the Arizona Cardinals playing at home. And when I say that number to you, you say, well, Murray went crazy. Murray ran for 24 yards. That's all he ran for. It was Carter and Conner. They couldn't stop him. I mean, the Eagles can't tackle. They can't tackle in space. Their secondary can't cover. Other than that, they're playing wonderfully.
It was a bad defense that had to play a doubleheader. I mean, the Cardinals had time of possession 39 minutes, 39 seconds. The Eagles had the ball for 20 minutes and 21 seconds.
And I said to you on the show yesterday, you were filling in for Stormy, I said, this is a game the Eagles should have the ball for 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. I thought the Eagles were going to run the ball down their throat. I thought the Eagles could run the ball right down their throat. And the Eagles only ran for 91 yards.
It was, especially with what we had seen Chicago do to Arizona the week prior, and the fact that the Eagles, we said that this was set up to be a get-right game offensively for Philadelphia, and if it didn't look good, then you can kind of sound all the alarms for the official panic mode in Philadelphia. Yeah, the alarms were going off.
Everybody who plunges into the Atlantic Ocean this morning is plunging with the Eagles.
We'll talk more about this game and the NFC East ramifications next.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
It's funny, Michael, watching that game, the Eagles getting out to the 21-6 lead. I was texting my brother back and forth because obviously we're Cowboys fans. We're rooting for the Arizona Cardinals. And I texted him. I said, the Eagles are ripe today, but the Cardinals keep making mistakes. And the opening Cardinals drive, they drive all the way down deep into the red zone. Kyler has a bad fumble. They ended up recovering it, but they had to settle for 3. Then another drive, the next one, they drive all the way down the field. There's the miscommunication. Kyler throws the bad pick 6. And it's just like, okay, I guess it's going to be that kind of day for Arizona. You watch that game. The Eagle defense never really stopped the Cardinals. I mean, the Cardinals, they end the game on 4 straight touchdown drives. It was all day long what Arizona did. This could have been worse. The fact that it was close was Arizona making mistakes early. They could have blown the Eagles out.
No question. The perfect example, Femi, of a game when you're watching that the one team's in the lead, but the other team's in control. I felt that way with the Colts game, too. I felt like the Colts had the lead, but I didn't think the Colts had control of the game, right? And then they did get control of the game on an interception, but it got called back on a horrendous call. But that goes beside the point. But I think that's the perfect example you're talking about. The Eagles could, because they can't get control of the offense. I thought the Cardinals, and we'll talk about this in the awards, but the Cardinals' offensive game plan was outstanding. It was outstanding. I mean, they had a 10-play drive, a 9-play drive, an 8-play drive, and then they went 7 plays, 70 yards, and got 4 first downs and scored. And no time at all. I mean, really no time at all. They went right down the field. And so there's no answer. I mean, Patricia tries blitz 0 on the 4th down in the red zone, touchdown. Can't cover the guy. I mean, they can't cover. I mean, here's what the worst thing that could happen to Philadelphia, and it won't because they're going to play Tampa, which I think kind of helps them a little bit in the playoffs. Or they're going to play the AFC, somebody in the AFC, right? They're either going to play Tampa or they're going to play New Orleans, or they could play Atlanta. I mean, one of those three. Obviously, if Tampa can beat Carolina, if they can't beat Carolina now, who cares? But 4-5, right? Dallas has got to play 7. That's Green Bay. That's going to be a hard game. That'll be a hard game if Green Bay's a 7th seed. The worst thing of all that happened on Saturday night, as you watched it, was that the Lions, not only did they get screwed by your man Brad Allen, they now have to play the Rams as the 3 to 6 seed. That ain't going to be good now. That is not going to be good. Not that I think the Rams can win 3 in a row, but the Rams are so good at one-game elimination. Now, obviously, it was a trap game yesterday. They got fortunate. We'll talk about that later, but I think that sets up Philly. I know that they're licking their wounds, but don't you want to play Tampa? But, Tampa can't run the ball. They don't really run the football effectively, and they don't really have a great home field advantage. But let's face it, the way Philly's playing right now, their pad level's not great. Defensively, I'm talking about. That they are not able to get control of the line of scrimmage with this front, which is what they base everything on, is their front. Their front is really letting them down in terms of their run fits. Their pad level's too high. They're getting pushed around. I mean, Arizona you don't run for 200 and some yards because you're playing. You're just not playing. You missed a fit. You're getting your ass kicked.
Yeah, no, it wasn't ass kicking up there. The Eagles, like the defensive line, which they hang their hat on, was non-existent. And the secondary, of course, we've talked about that secondary being weak for a couple of years now, that the D-line made it look better than what it was. And now that the D-line's not doing their job, the secondary looks even worse than it is. But last thing for me on this game, I wanted to ask you about this. What did you make of the Jonathan Ganon onside kick with 5:08 to go in the fourth quarter? Because watching it in real time, and maybe I'm just galaxy braining this thing, but I thought that it was actually a pretty smart decision of, okay, he knows his offense can score at will, essentially. He wants as much time as possible for his offense to where maybe if the Eagles score a touchdown, the Cardinals can go down the field and score a touchdown and potentially go for 2 to try to win the game. Eagles settle for 3, then all they need to do is get a touchdown to take the lead. Like, I thought it was kind of almost like a little bit of like a 4D chess move from Jonathan Gannon, kicking the onside kick to make sure he had enough time to respond.
Right, because he didn't want them to eat up all the clock and run the ball out, which they could easily have done. And look, for him, here's the way he's got to examine a game. For me to win a game, I got to play good in the red zone, right? For me to win a game, I got to play good in the red zone. And he was able to hold the Eagles to 2 for 2 in the red zone. They scored every time, but he kept them on the fringe there. They got the holding call, which pushed them back, and then they couldn't make the play, and they had to settle for the field goal. So I think it was look, hey, one thing he was trying to do, he played from behind and caught up. Think about that. Played from behind against Philadelphia at home. He's down 21-6, start the second half. I mean, credit them. I never saw that coming. A lot of people took the Cardinals in the points. Cardinals had the flu all week. I thought that was going to affect Murray. Murray didn't win the game for him. What won the game for him was their offensive line kicking the shit out of Philly's defensive line.
100% there. As the Philadelphia Eagles loosened up their grip on the NFC East there, they were in the driver's seat, no longer in the driver's seat, because what we saw Saturday night and all the controversy with that, the eligibles and ineligible offensive linemen on the 2-point conversion, the Cowboys beating the Lions 20-19. Of course, Brad Allen under scrutiny, Dan Campbell under scrutiny.
Brad Allen should be suspended.
Mike McCarthy under scrutiny.
If we're going to suspend players, why can't we suspend this guy?
Yeah.
Like, he needs to get suspended. And now, look, Dan Campbell needs to get suspended too, and so does Mike McCarthy. I mean, what's getting lost in this game, Femi, is the ridiculousness. Look, here's the thing I don't understand. We're taught the game of football. We're taught football that says whoever has the most points wins the game. Mm-hmm. For some reason, we've taken this analytical approach of the basketball. 3-pointers in volume are a lot better than 2-pointers. I get that because you have a lot more possessions in football. Right? Remember, football is a possession sport, and you're limited on possessions. It's not like the NBA where you're getting multiple possessions. So I get the 3 for 2 because by possessions, you make it up, even if you don't shoot as well. I got that.
Yep.
But you're sitting there in the second quarter, and you're playing in a close game, and it's a playoff-type game, and you've had 3 plays from the 9-yard line that you can't get, or 7-yard line, you can't get shit. Why is that 4th play going to be the winner? Why not just take the points? If he takes the 3 points there, he's got them in his pocket in the fourth quarter. Like, this is what drives me crazy. This is not, to me, analytics. Analytics is what you do in terms of the fourth quarter. How do we do this? How do we play it? What are the percentages? What's my opponent doing? Like, we don't factor that in. Like, you've got to factor that in. That's a close game. I'm going to need points. I need 7. I want 7. But if I get nothing here, what do I get? Like, that was a dumb move. McCarthy throwing the ball after they called their second down was another malpractice event. All this is getting lost because of the incompetence of Brad Allen, which he deserves it, right? He does. In defending Campbell, Campbell told the officials before the game what the play was, and they still blew it. And they can hide it. I mean, we're going to see this tape. It's like the Warren report. I mean, now we've got the trip, and we got the magic bullet coming out. We got who said, she said. Like, you're not going to see Brad Allen in a playoff game. You better not.
No. I don't think we should see him anymore as an NFL official.
He should be fired. He should be fired. He cost Detroit the 2 seed now in retrospect, where they would have to play Green Bay for a third time, or maybe somebody else. I don't know if Green Bay can beat Chicago, but the reality of it is it cost them that. And then here's the other thing is, most teams have 3 or 4 2-point plays, okay? You go in the game, you have 3 or 4 2-point plays. And they're unique plays. Okay, they're got to have it plays. We got to have this play. But when you move from the 2 to the 7, that play that you had at the 2 isn't the same play you have at the 7. Now you're in the red zone. You're in the low red zone, which is the hardest place to score, especially when you have a quarterback who doesn't move. Like, when you think about the movement, like Jalen Hurts yesterday, he gets out of the pocket, he scrambles, there ends up being like a pick, and Goddard ends up wide open in the end zone, touchdown. Mahomes moves around, and makes a play. Goff isn't doing that. So the play has to be perfect. Why not kick the ball and go to overtime? What is wrong with this? Can somebody, I don't understand the logic of this. Your job as a head coach is to live for another day, is to give your team every chance you have to win. And if you get beat, okay. But why does it have to come down to one play? Why can't it come down to one quarter?
It's always the difference. As somebody who likes to place wagers on sports, I always talk about the difference between betting and gambling. And what Dan Campbell did at the end of that game, and also too in the first half there, not taking the field goal and just going for it on 4th and goal from the 4, that's gambling. Betting is, okay, we got this 2-point conversion play. We have a perceived edge, in our opinion, to where we have the play of the year that we can go ahead and beat these guys. And it was. Unfortunately, though, the refs screwed it up. But then when you go back to the 7 and say, we're going to go for it anyways, you get the break of the offsides, and then still go for it from the 4-yard line for a 2-point. That's just gambling. You're on tilt at that point. You're gambling, you're doubling down, and that's not what you should be doing. And it ended up costing his team. Yes, even after the Brad Allen thing, they could have still won the game, because if they go to overtime, who knows what happens? What if you get a stop against Dallas? What if you get the ball first and go down the field and score a touchdown? Because the Dallas defense had been reeling. I don't get it. I think a lot of people are at fault. McCarthy, as you outlined, he is at fault. I was going crazy with that one, and it's one of the reasons why I don't know if you can fully trust this Cowboys team in the playoffs, because McCarthy's done this multiple times this season, once against Seattle and now against Detroit, to where he's throwing the ball when the other team has no timeouts left. It was a comedy of errors. In summary, it was a comedy of errors, and Cowboys ended up being the beneficiaries of this. But maybe we'll see this rematch in a few weeks, Michael, in the 2-3 game. Who knows? Maybe that's what happens.
But to me, I agree with you. McCarthy's the whole game is okay. What do we do? We got to get the field goal. We got to make this. We're going to win this game. And I get when Campbell told his team, we're going to take it down the field, we're going to go for 2 and win the game. I didn't really have a problem going for 2 at that point. You had a really good play. You have a really good play.
Yep.
But when you go back to the 7, you don't have a really good play. You have a low red zone play, right? And now all of a sudden you're out of it. Why do that? It just, to me, it's not good for your team. And I'm sure it makes everybody in the analytical community happy. But the result of the play and the result of the failure, now you're the 3 seed playing the Rams coming in. Turning down those points, here come the Rams.
Yeah.
Not kicking the extra point, here come the Rams. Nobody talks about the after effect of a bad decision.
Mm-hmm. It's do the analytics factor in the potential of having to now play multiple road games to have to go to the Super Bowl? Because that's what Detroit wants to do. They want to go to the Super Bowl. If chalk prevails, you're at Dallas, and if you beat Dallas, now you're at San Francisco, versus maybe you only have to play 1 road game. That's a big deal, and they threw it away.
Huge deal. Yeah, they threw it away. And I think, to me, the other thing you got to factor into this whole conversation is what are the chances of making it from the 7 as opposed to the 2? Those numbers go up. Of course, naturally, the ESPN graphic says go for it. I've yet to see it say don't go for it. And when are we going to put the quarter in play? First quarter, second quarter, third. And when are we going to equate possessions to the decision?
Yeah.
Like, how many more possessions do we have based on this decision? That's, to me, when the numbers go up.
The analytics say go. We'll get to the AFC South next.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
All right, let's get to the AFC South. Speaking of being on tilt, I think a lot of Indianapolis Colts backers might have been on tilt yesterday after the Colts were in control in the fourth quarter. They were up, and then the Raiders come through that back door. Colts do get the win, though, 23-20, in terms of keeping their playoff hopes alive here. But I know you were on the wrong end of the hook there in that game, but Indianapolis now at 9-7 is all they have to do is now just beat the Houston Texans, and they're in the playoffs, and they might be able to even win the division, depending on what happens in Jacksonville's game.
I don't know how they're going to win the division. I don't know how they're going to win playing defense the way they play defense. They made Aiden O'Connell look like Peyton Manning. Aiden O'Connell had one of the worst. If you just go through all the analytical numbers, he had one of the worst numbers of anything. And he played a 7-on-7 game. I mean, he threw for 286 yards. He only threw for 254 against the Chargers, who quit, and they scored 63. I mean, he threw for, it was ridiculous. They're sitting there playing. They're giving them easy throws. They can't rush. I mean, the whole idea behind Gus Bradley's defense is we're going to play cover 3, we're going to match zone, but we're going to rush 4 guys. And when you got Michael Bennett and you've got all these great rushers like they had in Seattle, that's good. It works. But when you don't have that and guys are stuck on blocks, at some point you have to coach the game. You got to be in the scheme. And there they are. That game should not have been close. Especially you're going against a quarterback who last week threw for 48 yards against the Chiefs. He threw for 146 against Brian Flores. Why? Because Flores went after his ass. I mean, so, like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't know how the Colts are going to beat anybody playing defense like that. I respect Steichen. I think he's done a great job offensively. They had some – he saw the game. What I saw in him was I thought he saw the game that – he knew he had to play. He got a huge break with the Jack Jones offsides, which we never got a camera angle to see if he was offsides or not on the field goal. But got a huge break on that one. And, the pass interference on Jack Jones, that was obvious. But they couldn't punch it in. I mean, they couldn't punch it in. And, there they are. They're sitting there 23-13. And all they got to do is get a stop at the end of the game, and now it's an onside kick game. Anyway, the hook won. God bless. That was a good call. But I think – I'm not complaining about this because I lost my recommendation. I'm complaining about this as you move forward to play the Texans, right?
Yeah. I'm
complaining about this as, because you played the Texans in week 1, in week 2 down there when they really weren't the Texans, right? You played them down there and they threw for 237 on you in that game, okay? And now you scored 31 points against their defense, but you gave up 24 first downs. Now they're coming to your place. Right? They're playing way better than they did in week 2. I don't know how you're going to stop them. I don't know where your front's going to get this. Like, at some point, a coach has to accept what his scheme is based on the relativity of the talent. Yeah. And if you can't, and then who are we playing? It goes back to analytics. You just can't say go for it if you don't know the whole situation. I mean, for people that live in the information world, as analytical community does, you're really not taking all the information in if you don't equate the opponent, all the things that go to the moment. If you don't add those all in. It's the same thing with Bradley. You're sitting there watching Aiden O'Connell throw goddamn out routes because you're just giving them to him, and you're saying, well, we're just going to tighten up down in the red zone. Okay, good luck. At some point, go after him. You got to have 2 or 3 blitzes that they can't block.
It was almost like he didn't watch Aiden O'Connell's past month or so. Like, I don't know what he
probably didn't.
Yeah.
He playing against Coke machines. I mean, that's why the Bengals, he goes and plays the Bengals. I know they was on the road, but, Jake Browning, I mean, he just we'll throw this bad boy all over the yard. I mean, you can't win like that. Why? Because you can't get control of the game. Like, they never got control of the game because they never forced a negative play. They never forced a turnover, which is his whole concept. But when you only rush 4, that concept goes out the window. The last 2 weeks, they've had not forced a turnover. They've not forced a turnover. And, they were fortunate enough that they were able to beat the Raiders. They got blown out by the Falcons. I mean, why did they dominate Pittsburgh 30-13? Well, they got 3 turnovers. Pittsburgh made 3 mistakes, and plus they blocked a punt.
Yeah. And, I mean, I guess going against Trubisky when he's throwing the football to the other team, that helps. Now they're going to take on this Houston Texans team who yesterday wasn't like the most efficient offensive performance, but they did enough there. 312 yards, 5 yards per play. They beat the Titans 26-3. Defensively, it looked a whole lot better, though, for Houston. They ended up knocking Will Levis out of the game on that fumble that they went ahead and scored. Ryan Tannehill comes in. His completion percentage was pretty good, but, I mean, the Tennessee Titans never really threatened offensively as they only had 187 yards and 3.5 yards per play. As Houston now is, like Indianapolis, 1 win away from going to the playoffs.
Look, I think Houston's the best team right now. I really do. Because I think that if they get healthier on defense, especially if they can get Greenlaw back in there to help them. Collins is a good player. Woods has been playing good. I thought Stroud was back to being Stroud coming off the concussion. Singletary's been dynamic for him. He's been really good. I thought Pierce would be their best back. Singletary is. But look, this Tennessee team's, and I said this on our show, all that Tennessee nonsense about Vrabel as an underdog, you got to throw it out the window.
Yeah.
Because this team is bad. This offensive line is atrocious. They really have some real issues. And the issues are, how good are they in the front office? And is Carthon and Vrabel going to be able to coexist together? I think that's got to be something talked about. I know Vrabel's contract's up. They want to keep Vrabel. But I think Vrabel's not happy with the setup that he has. I know that they can't be happy with Levis. Like, you can't think that you're going into next year saying, we got Levis, everything's going to be okay. They're in the worst place you could be. They have 2 young quarterbacks, and they don't have a quarterback. Like, this Tennessee team's going to need a lot of senior leadership to figure it out. And what we've seen from their team, they signed Dillard to a 1-year, $10 million. He can't even start for them. Right? Their offensive line is an absolute atrocious. They played him yesterday. They started Dillard because the other guy got hurt, but he's terrible. Right? This whole offensive line can't block anybody. Henry's not going to come back. Where are we going? Where are they going?
This is probably more of a Thursday question, but I kind of want to ask it to you now since it's at the top of my head. For Tennessee, and if you're Rand Carthon, the general manager, it's almost like this year for him, his goal was to figure out whether Will Levis is good or not. And Levis was out there and they played him. Obviously, Tannehill's a better quarterback than Will Levis. I think everybody could see that. But it felt like to me, he wanted to know, all right, can we go forward with Levis or should we go back to the well and draft a quarterback for a 3rd consecutive year, which maybe they might be in line to do that sitting at 5-11. Is that the proper approach as a general manager to say, hey, I know this guy is probably not our best option, but we need to figure out if he can play or not?
Well, I think unless the head coach is on board and the front offices and the ownership's on board, that's a tough one. I think Vrabel truly believed Tannehill would have given him the best chance to win. Mm-hmm. Now, some of the other problems come in. Tannehill can't move. He can run around. He got sacked 5 times in a game. They had a chance to get the ball. They had 11 first downs the whole goddamn day. They 1 for 12 on 3rd down. They got their asses kicked. They can't block. Femi, they can't block. So how do we evaluate a quarterback if we can't block? This is not a Vrabel-type team. This game was over quickly. And it was funny because in the contest, this was the circuit contest I'm referring to. This was a 5.5 line. And it went, by the time you and I were doing the show on Sunday, it was 4 and it went to some 3.5. There was money coming in on Tennessee, which to me, it's really kind of as respect to Vrabel, but not really legitimately the right thing to be doing because Vrabel can't control this anymore.
Yeah. We've talked about that quite a bit. New England's chief among them right there. They've been one of the worst teams against the spread because, especially early in the season, the bettors is, hey, Belichick getting these points, I got to do it. And unfortunately, if you don't have the horses, you don't have the horses. It's like you can only do so much.
If you have a quarterback who turns the ball over at such a rapid rate, look, I'm telling you something. If the Patriots could have protected the ball and just made common plays with their passing game, they got a chance, but they couldn't even complete a goddamn pass. Zappe's throwing. Like I said on the show yesterday, this is a game where the Patriots have a chance if Zappe doesn't turn the ball over, and yet they turns it over and they still have a chance.
They still have a chance, yeah. How about the rest of the AFC South, though? Jacksonville, without Trevor Lawrence, they get a shutout victory over Carolina, 26-0. This was probably one of the uglier games on the day.
Yeah.
Carolina's offense, beyond broken. This whole thing is just a disaster. Their owner's apparently a disaster as well. The video, I don't know if you saw that on Twitter. What
saw it.
What are we doing with that?
What's he doing?
What are we doing?
I mean, but it's his own fault. It's his own fault. He listens to too many people. He doesn't have any confidence, and he's running his team into the ground. He wants to run the team, and for a man who's made billions, he's making emotional decisions. He needs to just basically, and I'm sure he's going to get a phone call from the commissioner. Like, at some point, you got to step away and let somebody run your team. Like, you got to step away and let somebody run your team, whether it's Jim Harbaugh, whether it's if Belichick's available, Like, if you think you're going to win your fan base over by bringing Ben Johnson in, you're going to have the same problems. Like, you read that article in The Athletic where it's really like the Hunger Games where everybody reports to him and everybody's going after everybody for the power. Mm-hmm. Well, that happens. That's the one thing. I mean, that was in Oakland when we were all there. Obviously, Al Davis controlled everything down to whether we had gray carpet or red carpet or pink carpet in the building, right? And so, but he was never going to let anybody have enough say. So you kind of knew it. You knew the rules but he could make decisions, whereas Tepper can't. He's relying on the advice. He's talking to the media people. He's talking to the insiders. Like, he's just destroying whatever he has.
Yeah, and I don't see how, and I'm sure obviously someone's going to take that job because there's only 32 of them, but, even if you're Ben Johnson or whichever hotshot guy they want to go ahead and hire, it's like you see the owner acting like that. It's like, man, what is this organization? You do that in public. What are you doing behind closed doors?
He's going crazy. He's going crazy. Hear what he wants to do. He wants to fix it tomorrow. He doesn't want to go through the understanding of what it takes to fix it. Like, he's not willing to accept what it takes. He just thinks he can buy his way to whatever he needs to do to fix it. And that's just not true.
Yeah, that's not the case. This is a salary cap sport. You can't just throw money around everywhere. You have to actually make smart decisions and have people in the building who can make smart decisions as well. And, I mean, they're just so beyond broken right now, just in terms of what we see on the field and, most importantly, what we see at the top there in the skybox with David Tepper as an owner. Throwing a drink on a fan, come on, get out of here. The league should fine his ass, honestly. I don't know. I don't know what he's doing there. On the other side, though, we'll hand out some hardware. Week 17 awards. We'll also get to the NFC South, where Tampa Bay yesterday had a chance to clinch the division and laid a big ol' egg at home against the Saints. We'll wrap all that up on the other side. This is the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
All right, before we get to the awards, let's talk some NFC South here, Michael. Yesterday, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers lose to the New Orleans Saints 23-13, kind of opening the door a little bit on who can win that NFC South. Bucs still control their own destiny. If they win on Sunday, they win the division and host their playoff game against the 5 seed. Is Tampa kind of losing this thing down the stretch, or do you think they'll hang on and win the division ultimately?
I mean, we saw the real Baker. They can't run the football. They haven't been able to run the ball all year, except when they saw Green Bay and the Packer uniforms, they could run the ball. But for the most part, we saw Baker kind of be Baker. He threw for 309 yards, scored 13 points late in the game. Carr was Carr. 32 attempts, 197 yards, didn't make a mistake. Managed the game correctly. And they come out of there with the win. This was one of those where you knew the Saints were the bright play, right? The line moved from 3 to 2.5. You didn't want to take the Bucs here. The Bucs were overpriced in the marketplace.
Yeah.
But I didn't have enough faith, enough guts to bet Carr and Dennis Allen. Although we know Dennis Allen's a really good defensive coordinator, and he did a good job of stopping Mayfield and stopping the Bucs offense and taking away the big play. Mike Evans had three catches for 70 yards, but really wasn't an impact in the game. without Lattimore even playing. We didn't get the Lattimore Evans fights that we typically always see. So,
It was a shame. I missed it.
Yeah, I know. But they were in complete control of this game until the fourth quarter when they got a bunch of junk yards. I mean, let's face it. I mean, the fourth quarter they ended up with 7 first downs and, it basically got almost 200 yards in the fourth quarter when the game was over. So, I'm not – look, Tampa's a very average team. I'm not sure New Orleans is the best team because when you turn the heat up on New Orleans, can they actually make plays? Thankfully, we're only going to get one team from the South. We're getting 2 teams from the South in the AFC, which is kind of a little bit, are we sure we want that? But we're going to get it anyway. I never really bought Baker as, they're going to give him a big contract or pay him like that. Okay. You're just going to be a 9-8. Maybe you're 10-7, but you're never winning anything. You're never going anywhere. I don't think he's going to make enough plays. But I do think this, and I think we talked about this when it happened. I think this won Joe Flacco the comeback player of the year.
I mean,
how do you not give it to Flacco? Look, you can give it to Hamlin. That's fine. And certainly coming back from death deserves some kind of award. There's no question about that, right? I mean, that's a remarkable thing that kid did to even get on the field and have 3 tackles this season. But if you really want to give the comeback player of the year to somebody who came back, it's got to be Flacco. And we said it when it was 200-1.
Yeah. We were telling people, said, hey, take a look at this thing, Joe Flacco of the Browns, if they get it rolling. And now the entire state of Ohio, I guess not the entire state because Cincinnati fans aren't, but at least Northeast Ohio has rallied all behind Joe Flacco. Everyone's wacko for Flacco and all that stuff. And the Flacco frenzy, I mean, they're saying that this guy could be the man of the year in the state with what he's been able to do. And I agree with you. Like you said, obviously you don't want to poo-poo what DeMar Hamlin is coming back from because clearly that's the ultimate comeback that anybody could ever have. But in terms of on-field performance and being impactful to the season, Joe Flacco kind of saving the Browns after all the quarterback injuries and the benchings to P.J. Walker and Dorian Thompson-Robinson, for him to come in there and ignite this Browns team and have them playing their best offensive football in the Kevin Stefanski era. I think that should be rewarded with comeback player of the year. That's my
I do too. And look, Atlanta, they lay a huge egg in Chicago. I mean, you kind of saw that one coming, although that line moved to them too, right? That was 3 and it went down to 2.5. And, that was my Hall & Oates play. There was no way I was taking either side in that game. But I think that ended the Arthur Smith era in Atlanta. If you want to, I think that'll be it. I think they'll make dramatic changes in Atlanta. My sense of it is just listening to people in the, around the league talking about where these jobs are going to go. I think that's certainly going to be one. I think, when you look at, we mentioned Tennessee, I think there's an interesting situation there. Vrabel, they don't want to lose Vrabel, but I think they're going to have to handle something. I think the Raiders situation is interesting. I think Jim Harbaugh hiring Don Yee is really interesting. Don Yee does a great job. He's well connected within the league. Jim typically doesn't like to hire agents. He's kind of back and forth. But when he made that move, I think, Yee represents Brady, Garoppolo. He's kind of got a connection inside that building at the Raiders, a direct link to Mark Davis. Knowing Harbaugh, as nostalgic as he is and as kind of as, he started his pro coaching career at the Raiders. He's got a great sense of history with Matt and all that. I mean, if they're not going to hire Pierce, I could see them having a conversation with Harbaugh.
Yeah, I mean, imagine Harbaugh too. If you turn around the Raiders and get the Raiders to back to prominence.
Oh, he's going to turn around any team he gets to. Now the question is, does he want to work? Who are they sticking him with? Are they going to keep the current general manager, the interim general manager in place? Mm-hmm. I think that becomes Champ Kelly. That becomes an interesting call because I just think, to me, Jim's not going into a place where he's going to have to deal with the situation he had in San Francisco where Trent Baalke's telling him he's got other people interfering with him. I don't think that's going to happen.
The NFC playoff picture, obviously, in terms of teams that can control their destiny. How about Big Daddy's Packers last night?
I was with them last night. It took us 6 minutes to get there, but we got there. Now, the man wants to be negative, okay? He's dying to be negative, right? And I'm watching the game, and I'm like, Big Daddy, your boy. Now, he's very confused to start the game off because LaFuck had a hat on. So we really don't know if he got a haircut, okay? So that was a problem for us. So he got the hair on. He liked the beard look going. The sideburns going down.
Trimmed up.
But I'm gonna tell you something now. You can say whatever. We kidded LaFuck around here, but when LaFuck knows what the defense is doing, his play calling last night was top shelf. It was outstanding. And Jordan Love was great. And their offensive line handled every blitz. Credit their offensive line coach, the scheme. They were by far the better team. And I think this, and I try to tell this to Big Daddy, and he wasn't going to believe it. You know, he becomes obsessed with certain players. Like the Knicks trade, you know, the classic. He's a Knicks fan, right? Well, you know, it was a we'll see, but he didn't want to give up on, I think it's Quigley.
Emmanuel Quigley.
He loved Quigley. He loves Quigley. Everything around the Knicks should have been built around Quigley. You know, that was the whole thing. So, you know, we'll see. And everything's about, you know, the defensive line. They dominated. I mean, other than the stupid, they don't catch the punt. That's a complete route. I thought they looked incredible. Even he admitted to me in the late text, he said, yeah, this is the best they played all year. I thought LaFleur was as good as they can be. Their skill players are outstanding. And when Aaron Jones is humming, man, they're good. They're good now.
Can they ever get Christian Watson back healthy? Because like I feel like we've only seen about 3 or 4 games of this fully formed skill position group to where it's like maybe it is a dangerous team. Like let's say that now they obviously have to take care of business against Chicago, and they were in this spot last year and they blew it against Detroit. This year they have a chance to go ahead and correct that error from a season ago, but if they can ever get Watson back and you have Jones and Jaden Reed is awesome, Dobbs is playing well as well, and the young tight ends.
They say it's his ribs, so hopefully he can go. But here's what I do think, what I feel like I learned about the Packers is when LaFleur and Barry, when they have played against a team before, they play better. Like when they play a new team, like the Giants or the Panthers, they're not as good. But when they know you, they're good. I mean, that's why they played good against the Lions in the second game. That's why they played good against Minnesota in the second game. Now, will it hold up in the Bears in the second game? Because they played good against the Bears in the first game. Yeah. I think when they have a feel for the coach of the other team, offensively and defensively, they're better. It's when they play these new teams that they really kind of don't have a handle on. Now, I say that, but offensively, I think Jordan Love, there's no need to talk about is Jordan Love a good player. Jordan Love's a good player. Like, Jordan Love, to me, is what everybody wishes Justin Fields would be. Like, Jordan Love's good enough to play. Like, they don't need to draft a quarterback. They got one. They need to build a team around him. They need to get better defensively, but they got a quarterback. He was good. And he's going to have some bad days, no question. But I'd rather have Jordan Love at quarterback than Baker Mayfield.
We'll have the Justin Fields conversation on Thursday because the fan base, they were chanting, we want Fields at the end of the game. He had one of his better games offensively. The Bears have had this second half surge, but now they have the chance to maybe play spoiler, and who knows how that factors into what the decision making is in the offseason. But we'll talk about that on Thursday. Before we go, though, we have to hand out these awards. The Fred Palermo Best Game Plan of the Week. I mean, how could it not go to Arizona?
Has to, right? I mean, every Philly fan, they're crying. You know, I mean, look, it's bad. I mean, they made the move to Patricia. You know, their pad level's not good. Their fundamentals are not very good. Look, let's face it. Yesterday they scored, they scored 31 points. They got 7 from their defense. They give up 35 to an Arizona team that got blown out by the Bears. Whoa.
Yeah, that's not a good sign there for the Philadelphia Eagles, who are limping into the postseason. Fraud of the week here, and I mean, I guess it's the Dolphins.
Unfortunately, it's Miami. Yeah. I mean, look, Miami's beat up now. I mean, they're not the same team. I was high on them. I thought they had a really good chance. I think they're going to have a hard time beating Buffalo, and they're going to have a hard time winning a playoff game. I mean, especially as beat up as they are right now, because their offense is still soft. I mean, they're not a physical team. That offensive line isn't physical. And as the game went on yesterday, you could see the Ravens just whoop them.
On the lamb.
Well, I think Atlanta's on the lamb. I mean, you go into Chicago and lay an egg like that. You got everything on the line. You give up 37 points to Chicago, who doesn't really score. I think they're in a tough time. I mean, look, we've been saying it all year. Atlanta's been drafting a 7-on-7 team. I mean, we're not playing flag football, Atlanta. How many more receivers you're going to come back and draft another running back? I think they're going to change everything in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, David Tepper might be a bonus on the lamb as well. If you don't know, now you know.
I think Baltimore is by far, their pad level's outstanding. They're hungry. They're determined. They have that look to them that they're, you're going to have to really play well. And Lamar, is the MVP. He won it yesterday, and he deserves it. It's fascinating, right? Atlanta wasn't interested in Lamar this offseason. Nobody was interested in Lamar. I'm not saying you could have gotten him, but the fact is you're not interested, to me, was ridiculous.
Not only were they not interested, they couldn't wait to tell people they weren't interested in Lamar Jackson.
Exactly, Femi. They couldn't. They went out of their way to say, we don't want him. Why would we want him? We got Desmond Ridder.
Yeah, we got Ridder. Why would we want the MVP of the league? It is what it is.
I mean, Jordan Love's a good player.
Yeah.
Accept it. Like, move on. Like, he's a really good player. Just like Brock Purdy's a really good player. Like, at some point, they show you enough, and if they can play consistently, they're good. Are they going to have bad games? Josh Allen's been having some bad games. We don't say anything about that.
Yeah. The ball just comes off pretty when you see Jordan Love drop back and throw it. He's got
his mind was good. He was quick-minded yesterday. The blitz, Brian brought everything he could at him, and he handled it like it was nothing.
Well, how about this to chew on, though? So next Sunday night will be the Bills at the Dolphins, and there's a chance if Pittsburgh beats Baltimore, if Jacksonville beats Tennessee, and we don't get a tie Saturday night in Houston and Indianapolis, the Bills will be playing to either be the 2 seed and AFC East champs, or if they lose, out of the playoffs. How's that for high stakes?
Oh, boy.
How's that for high stakes? We'll marinate on that as we get set for Week 18. We'll be back on Thursday. Thank you to our producer, Elliot Bowman, with us on the ones and twos as always. Subscribe, rate, and review. Once again, Happy New Year, and we'll talk to you guys on Thursday.